Time to be equalized for the third time. Yeah, there's no clever intro for that. It's Equalizer. My thoughts on the shouldn't point out my thoughts on the first two Equalizer movies. The first one was a really pleasant surprise. Denzel Washington makes for a very, very intimidating, effective, but charming, likable guy with a dark past. And like that scene I still watch that scene on YouTube every now and then. That scene at the table with, I can't remember the villain's name or the actor's name, but where he's just talking about, the story of the boy who was adopted and then disappeared or went back into the system and all that. And it's like, you ask me what I see when you look at you ask me what I see when you look at you. When I'm asking you, what do you see when I look at me? That's still one of those iconic moments. And you even see that. I love the acting in that scene too, because you just see that his like that little smirk he has just fade, just like he's going like, and you see him about like just a hint, like ooh, and just that cold dead stare. And the action's really good too. Second one, it's not quite as good, but it's still a good movie. I like it a lot. It's still got some good scenes in it, good dialogue, good action. Denzel Washington. My favorite scene out of that movie might, or at least one of them anyway, might be when he basically gets that kid who's taken under his wing a little bit, and basically say, come on, killer, come on. Say, no, you can do it, I can do it, come on. You don't know what death looks like yet. That's a freaking, because it's just so real and raw. And now you have this the third movie and the final movie in the series. And the question is, how good is it? Does it live up to the other movies? Is it the best or the worst of the series? What do you get out of this? I will say this right up front. Of the three, this is probably my least favorite, but it is by no means a bad movie. And in fact, actually, a lot of people kind of, I think, agreed with that, because it didn't start out with the greatest reviews, like around 60%, which is good. But as time has gone by and more reviews have come in, it's gone all the way up to 75%. So it actually went up quite a bit, which I'm glad for, because I like the movie quite a lot. I do like this movie quite a lot. I do think it's a fitting conclusion to this character's story. And I love Denzel Washington, and I love him in this role. So it will be sad to see that this is the end of that role. But it's still a very it's still good send-off for the character. First and foremost, the movie is shot. This might be the best looking of any of them, because you get these fantastic like aerial views and scenic shots of Italy and in the village, like the town he's staying in, these villas. Like, it looks fantastic. So it's probably the best shot of them. I don't know if I'd say it's the best edited, but it's got some good editing. It's got a little bit. One thing I will note is that I think, how old is Denzel Washington right now? That is a good question, because Denzel Washington's not young anymore. Like he's not like ancient or anything like that. But Denzel Washington, hold on, Denzel Washington, he's in his 60s, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's 68. He's going on 70. So the fact that he can, he's still doing this to the degree he is fantastic. It's like Samuel L. Jackson, man, that fountain of youth. He really doesn't look that much older than he has for a while. He's gotten a little bit saggier, but we all get that eventually. And it's really just kind of like in the cheeks a little, like that thing you have on your cheeks like that. That's happened a little bit with him, but nothing serious. There is one particular shot where they do kind of, I want to say, play up they kind of show he's gotten older. They show he's gotten older, I think it is. And it's very early on. It's only one shot. I heard one reviewer kind of say that he's kind of coming to terms with the fact he's getting older, and he's and all that, and he's contemplating his age and what is worth. I don't get it. None of that really happens here. It could be inferred, but I don't really see that. The movie opens up with the scene, so nothing I'm going to say is not already in the trailer. So I'm not going to give away anything that's not in the trailer, or anything I talk about that's not in the trailer. I'm only going to really allude to stuff that's going on there. I try not to spoil, but if it's in the trailer, it's free to talk about. The movie opens up with actually the action sequence, or the aftermath of the action sequence. In that where we see him in the chair in the cellar, and I'm going to give you 9 seconds. And that's what we're actually catching up. And throughout the movie, we're learning, Why was he there? We assume it was for one reason, but it turns out it's actually for a different reason, and the reasoning behind that reason. And when you really break it down, you're like, oh yeah, this is what he does. And you can see in the trailer he gets injured at one point. It happens again early on. It's a lot of them. I have to admit, without giving away how he gets injured, he gets shot. But how he gets shot, I won't say what the quote is, but I'm going to say it, and you'll probably immediately think to what I'm about to say, or what I would refer to. I went to a Blazing Saddles quote in my mind. But yeah, you still get some visceral action in that scene, absolutely. And then it's a lot of him recovering, kind of feeling out the life in this town. And you hear Andrea's like, he's been running a lot and he couldn't really find peace, but here he kind of is understanding it, and he truly values this place. The people come to love him. Then the mafia comes to town, and he's trying not to get involved, but you can see he's like, you have trouble of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah, I try not to be. I'm kind of allergic to this shit, but you were making it very hard for me. So, and by the way, I learned this is a pressure point technique. I learned to kind of help alleviate headaches. The thing you see him doing in the trailer to the guy with the thumb, I'm like, that's kind of right where I do the pressure. Does that mean if I do this to a certain degree, it'll make me shit myself? Because that's what he says. The pain level is 1 through 10. A level 4, you're going to shit yourself, and you don't want that. They don't want that. And then it leads to him actually making what at first we think would be a dumb decision, but then you realize, oh no, he had to do that because otherwise he knew what was going to happen, which leads to more confrontation with the mafia and them coming to blows. Now, I think some people might argue there isn't enough action in this movie, but I had to think on that thinking about the original movies. When I actually thought about that, there's the famous scene in the Russians room, or the Russians club, whatever, where he kills the Russians in there. There is a brief scuffle in the diner, but I don't really count that, as well as a brief action sequence with these two crafty cops. I guess I could count that one a little bit. But beyond that, there's really only the main giant action sequence throughout the Home Depot, if you will, the supply store, and that's it. There's only like there's only like 2 big action sequences and 2 small ones. The second one, you got the scene on the train, you got the scene in the car, you get the scene where he's protecting Bill Pullman, you get the scene obviously near the very end where he's taking all these guys out, and I think there was maybe one more that I'm blanking on. I'm talking about like an action scene. There's 4. Here you get the scene the scene early in the beginning, you get the scene that comes later with the mob guys, and then you get the final action scene. There's only 3, but that ties in with the original, more or less. There's a few minor sequences here or there. But implied action, and you get a scene where he's kind of replaying the action in his head a little bit. Plus, so I don't know. I feel like the action is right. You're not actually there solely for the action, because the action have never been like, they've never been like super amazing. They've been good for what they are, but they're not like martial arts or anything like that. No, you're here because it's the character and his interaction with these people, and him growing to like these people, and you growing to like these people, and you want him to protect the people that he's with. He meets the guy who saves his life, who's a great guy. He meets this girl who, there's always that one character who he's very much the random person he befriends. It was Chloe Grace Moretz in the first one. The kid in the second one, and then he befriends a lot of them, but there's this woman who I'm wondering if she's actually like trying to be a love interest, but I don't know 100% if that was what they were going for. But I like the idea that this new one's actually kind of a love interest, and he's a widower, so that would be an interesting different take on that, where he thinks he's worthy enough to love again or something like that. But they never really explore that, and that's okay. And then there is the CIA operative, not quite, the CIA affiliate, played by Dakota Fanning, which is great to see those two out again since I think, what was it, Man on Fire? I think it was. And she's actually really good in the film. Like, I love their chemistry. Again, when she meets him for the first time, there's a lot of rapport. You know, these two have known each other for years, so it's great to see them interacting again. And her relationship to him, how he knows her, is ultimately, you should have seen it coming, but because the second movie has been, since the last two movies it's been a while since the last two movies, it makes sense why you wouldn't immediately think, oh, okay, that's who this character is and why he cared about her that much. I will say this as well. Obviously, I have no real information on the organized crime world. I'm sure maybe there's some documentaries on how these things work these days. But there's a scene in the movie where he confronts the mob in a court, like a court square. And they're about to, like, shoot him, and something happens to prevent that. And then I'm watching, it's like, you know, this is a really interesting question, because how do organized the mafia, whatever you want to call it, how does organized crime deal with the modern era like this? Especially when you got the mafia still thinking it's like the 50s or the 60s and we don't have cell phones. So they're just coming into town and just trying to, like, basically whipping out their dicks and basically saying, look how big it is. And basically and then you got these people with phones and I'm like, oh yeah, you're in the modern era. They have cell phones and the internet exists. You really think you can get away with this as easily as you used to be able to? So it begs the question how effective these guys actually are. Because, I mean, they have bribes and all that. But, yeah, it's one thing that doesn't get brought up a lot in movies, how these organized crime families, particularly the way that these guys are acting, or organized crime, whatever, handles the modern era, which clearly these guys aren't as smart as you'd think if they forgot. Oh, yeah, these guys have cell phones, too. Which leads, honestly, to the finale. In the finale, honestly, the one thing I will say about this movie is I think they are working around the fact Denzel's gotten older, because there is a lot of it. The finale of the movie, without giving too much away, is actually very different than the previous two. The previous two were very much the mano-a-mano confrontation, him taking other guys out. And he's definitely doing that, but in a very different way. All I'll say is this. They really highlight the fact that this guy was a cold-blooded, merciless killer. They actually portray him like a specter of death at the end. And I'm like, this is different than the other two, but I am freaking digging it. I am digging it. So anyway, final thoughts. If you've seen the other two movies and you like the other two movies on any level, I think you'll like this one. How long is this one, actually? That's a good question. I will say all the movies do feel like they do drag a little bit. They do feel like they're not dragging their heels, per se, but they feel like they're slow burn movies is what I'm trying to get at. Let's see. What is the length of this one? This one comes in at... Do I have a... Okay, hold on. This particular movie came in at an hour and 49 minutes. You know what, that felt about right, but I will say this, you probably could have cut a little bit of him recovering out of the equation, because that takes up a decent third of the movie, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, you still get him interacting with the people, and that's actually very nice, and him bonding with them, and liking them, and growing to like this whole town. So maybe if you cut maybe 5 minutes of that out, it could flow a little bit better. This is just my opinion, obviously, but yeah, maybe that might be my one real big criticism. I thought they worked around Denzel's age pretty well. And again, he's not like decrepit or anything like that. He's still doing action. It's just they are working around some of it, I think. And the character has always been a very specific type of that. He's always been a very precise, precision-driven character. So I think they work well within how they define the character and how they portrayed it. Other than that, though, I like the film. I think it is a good conclusion to the movie. I'm not going to say how it ends, whether he lives or dies or not. Because I mean, first off, you don't want to know how it ends. But second of all, we get a lot of these films. Like Logan, for example, you know, the hero dies, but it was a fitting end for his character. In Guardians 3, no one died, which worked for that story. Here, and I'll be honest, going into it, depending on how they portrayed it, life or death probably could have worked for this character. As it stands, what they did, I think, worked. I will say this, though. I will say that one last thing, too. Where it ends, it does kind of seem a little abrupt with the ending. I will say that. Like, maybe just, like, a pan out over... Kind of like the Spectre... Not Spectre. No Time to Die ending, where he's like, let me tell you a story about a man named James Bond. And then it just pans out, and they see them driving in places all the time in the world. It could have done maybe something like that, but that's just my opinion. I just feel like the scene just kind of ends. Not quite as bad as the Protege's ending, where solid movie, I thought, but it just stopped. Like, just stopped. No answer, no anything. Anyway, I digress. What do you think? Have you seen the movie yet? What did you think? Until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And I'll see you folks next time. Have a good